These will be the new champions in each weight class by the end of the year. Alright, new year, new me, and probably a new set of champions by the end of the year. A decent amount of change happened at the top during 2024. It started last year with a close fight between Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis that resulted in the titles changing hands. That next month, Ilya shocked the world by putting a brutal end on the featherweight reign of Volkanovski. And then a couple months later, the GOAT, Belal Muhammad, made sure that everyone remembered the name by beating Leon Edwards. And then towards the end of this year, Merab would similarly finally get his title shot against the striking champ Sean O'Malley and leave him frozen for most of the fight, getting that title. With half of the champions changing by the end of 2024, it's another reminder that it's pretty fucking hard to stay on top in the UFC. So in today's video, let's predict who stays on top and who gets dethroned by the end of 2025. Okay, I will admit, I was quite disrespectful of Pantoja in this video, and I have since repented and will admit he is an all-time flyweight, especially considering he has damn near lapped all the top flyweight contenders and just recently showed there's levels to MMA as he choked out newcomer Kai Asakura as he made his debut in the UFC. It seems like Pantoja has both Brandon's numbers, who continue to stay on top of the featherweight rankings, even if Pantoja does fight a new contender like Tatsuro Taira or Amir Albazi. I would imagine he takes care of those guys pretty easily. I know that MMA math doesn't work too great all the time, but considering both Brandons beat those guys and Pantoja has those Brandons as numbers, I think there is a huge skill gap between Pantoja and Taira, Albazi, or really any other contender below number 2. So to keep a short story short, I think Alexandre Pantoja is still going to be the flyweight champion in the UFC by the end of 2025. Ooh, okay, bantamweight. This is where things get a little spicy with my first hot take. I really think that in the next coming weeks, Umar does beat Merab, but Petr Yan can and will beat Umar. So hear me out. Maybe my thoughts change in the next 2 weeks, depending on the performance Umar gives Merab, but I think Petr Yan can get back on top for Umar's first title defense. Looking at the Corey-Umar fight, as good as Umar looked in this fight overall, Corey showed Umar isn't as dominant as his cousin on the ground, and when he was having trouble keeping Corey down and exerted way too much energy trying to make this a wrestling match, he switched to more of a kickboxing match and won in this way. We all know Petr struggles with dominant, aggressive, and constantly shooting wrestlers like Merab and Aljo, and though Umar is a really good wrestler, I don't think he's going to keep a guy like Petr down because he doesn't heavily rely on his wrestling like those guys. Umar is really well-rounded, which ironically will work to his detriment here because he will at times be comfortable enough to strike and trade with Petr, to which I think Petr takes advantage of and wins this fight doing so. And just a reminder, because I forgot too, Petr is only 2 years older than Umar and is just now entering his prime. So yeah, in the realistic scenario, Umar beats Merab this month and Petr gets the title shot. I do think Petr Yan can and will get it done, barring Sean O'Malley doesn't get an undeserved title shot against Umar and Merab doesn't beat Umar, because I think it's a game of rock, paper, scissors at the top of bantamweight where Merab beats Yan most of the time, but Umar beats Merab most of the time, and I think Yan beats Umar most of the time. Moving on to featherweight, this is a pretty easy one. I already made a video on how practically no one beats Ilia Topuria at featherweight, and that pretty much still holds true. Unless Diego Lopez lands a miracle, I highly doubt that Ilia Topuria gets toppled at the top. Ilya has the power, the skill, the boxing, and confidence to practically take out everyone in this division and most people in the next division. And really the only way Ilia Topuria isn't the featherweight champion by the end of this year is if he gets bored of this division and does move up to that next division permanently. There were rumors from his coach last month that Ilia Topuria was going to vacate the title if he does move up to lightweight, but Ilya has since cleared it up on Twitter, saying that he will not vacate the title, at least for now. However, the things he said in the past about the division does make it seem like he wants to move up sooner rather than later. Right after beating Volk way before he faced Max, he already was saying that there wasn't much competition at featherweight and that no one can challenge him, and honestly, he's looking like he's right. I doubt this move happens this year, but if he does beat Diego Lopez, he might not give Movsar the time of day and just might permanently move up to 155. But for now, Ilia Topuria will stay on top of the featherweight division by the end of 2025. Another similar situation is happening at lightweight, as Islam is looking to lap the division, first starting with Arman and most likely continuing with Charles by the end of the year. Islam Makhachev is the pound for pound best right now and easily is the most skilled fighter on the roster, and probably one of the most skilled fighters of all time. I really see no one in the division beating Islam, which might be risky to say considering he's fighting in 2 weeks against a really good Arman Saryukian, but I'm willing to bet that Islam takes that dominantly and more convincingly than their first fight. The only way I see Islam losing the title is if Ilya does move up this year and gets that title shot for double champ status. But for one, if Islam beats Arman, I think the next title defense is already lined up with Charles Oliveira, and I don't think Ilya can leapfrog Charles unless, God forbid, Charles gets injured again. And two, if Ilya does somehow get the fight with Islam this year, it's far from a guarantee that Ilya beats Islam, and that's a coin toss of a fight, and in my opinion, still slightly favoring Islam. So all in all, I do think Islam Makhachev's position at the top of the lightweight division is pretty much secure for the end of 2025. Despite not showing out like the typical monster that he usually is, I still think Shavkat gets it done against Bilal Muhammad this year and becomes the new welterweight champion. Sure, his grappling was pretty much nullified most of the fight with Ian Gary, but you have to give credit for how good Ian Gary is, and he is a very similar build to Rakhmonov, so taking him down wouldn't be as easy as everyone else. And another thing is that I doubt Shavkat is going to initiate grappling exchanges with Bilal. I think Shavkat is going to stuff a lot of the shots coming from Bilal and really focus on where he is much stronger, which is of course his striking. Shavkat hit Ian Gary with some really solid shots, and I think he does even better against Bilal despite Bilal's Canelo-like boxing and forward pressure. Now, with the Shavkat fight probably going to happen after Ramadan, I still think there's room for Shavkat to even defend his belt by the end of this year, and I think that's where things get really dicey. Shavkat could be fighting JDM, which, with how well JDM boxes, could be a hard fight, but a more interesting fight could even be Islam Makhachev. If Islam beats Arman a second time, by this point, every top 5 contender in the lightweight division has already been beaten by Islam or is coming off of a KO loss. Islam easily, out of any champion, has the most reasonable case for pursuing double champ status, and with his boy Bilal out of the way, that's a high-level sambo matchup waiting to happen. And considering Islam and Bilal are practically the same size, and Islam is much more skilled all around than Bilal, I think he makes a really tough fight for Shavkat. But still, that's a wild hypothetical, and in the most realistic scenario, I think Shavkat beats Bilal sometime in the second quarter of the year, and that's his only fight of the year. Okay, I've hated on this guy, but you can't deny when he's healthy, he's an absolute monster, and I think this year he completes his destiny and becomes champ because for the most part, he does look healthy. Khamzat will for sure get the title shot against the winner of UFC 312's main event, and I think he wins against Dracus and runs through Sean Strickland. Sean will be no match for Khamzat's wrestling, but I think a more interesting matchup would be Dracus and Khamzat, but still, I don't think Dracus has enough goofy plot armor to stop the monster that is Khamzat Chimaev. I still do think that Dracus presents the most problems for Khamzat in this division, as he is big as shit, pretty much the only other competent grappler in this division, and is super strong, but the pressure and sheer dominance Khamzat has shown in his recent return is something I don't think can be stopped. The only way I see Dracus winning is if he somehow survives those first 2 rounds and brings Khamzat into deep waters like Kamaru did in their fight, but I think Khamzat is a lot more calculated and zeroed in on his target now more than ever. Not much more to say here other than if Khamzat does stay healthy this year, I do think it will be his year. So the next one is a pretty tough call because it's really up to Alex Pereira or Magomed Ankalaev at this point, and I do think this fight does eventually happen by the end of this year, but after Magomed's performance against Rakic, and based on what he's been saying, I think this fight is way closer than we originally thought. Magomed didn't really show out against Alexander Rakic, and his low output and low impact striking didn't scream Alex's kryptonite. If anything, that fight showed that if he fights like that against Alex, he is cooked beyond belief. A lot of people point to Magomed's wrestling, which of course is way better than Alex's, but I really don't think he will use it as much despite that clear advantage. He said that he intends to stand and strike with Alex on Twitter. He stood and striked with practically his last 4 opponents, and in his fight against Jan Blachowicz, he kept getting crushed by leg kicks before he decided to make the adjustment a little too late. I think pride will stop him from wrestling a lot with Alex, and if he continues to stand and strike with Alex, I think he gets crushed by Alex's leg kicks in a similar fashion like the Jan fight and may make the adjustment a little too late, and that's if he doesn't get KO'd before then. Him and Magomed is regardless a super close fight, but I do think Alex can get it done. And now we're at the end of the video with a pretty easy one. I do think Tom Aspinall will be the undisputed heavyweight champion by the end of this year, whether it be beating John Jones or John Jones retiring. Tom will eventually be undisputed and finally get what he deserves and really what he has already earned. There's rumors John will get those 30 big ones this year, and Dana has said 100% this fight is happening. Whether you believe the Pink Man or not is up to you, but I do think he will do everything in his power to try to make this happen. In either scenario, Tom is your heavyweight champion in 2025. So what do you guys think about this list? Do you guys agree with me? Do you not? Who do you think is going to be the champion at each division by the end of this year, 2025? And what are some of your hot takes this year in terms of who's going to be on top and who's not? Anyways, thank you guys for always supporting in each of my videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.